Hello, my name is Kim J, and this video is me doing a single panel of a web comic that I've been working on currently. It's a Ko-fi supported comic, meaning whenever a supporter makes a donation for a particular page, when it hits its goal, then I make a page of that comic. The threshold for each page is $20, so it's not that much. So anytime when it's met, I do a page and I post it up on my other medias along with a shout out of the person who donated to get that page made. And this particular comic is called The Orb of Fear. It's a pretty short comic. It was about Java encountering this mysterious orb while he was helping his mother, who is an archaeologist, set up an exhibit in a museum. And the curator introduces him to this ominous looking spear and telling him a brief history about what it is and what it does. And Java, being a little skeptical of the whole idea of the object. So this is page 6 of that comic, where Java inadvertently invokes the orb and it sets off. So this one panel's him looking back at the orb. A bit, well, I'm not sure what to call the expression. I guess a bit surprise, or trying to register what happened. As I said, this comic is pretty short because I've only written the first act of it, which is what I'm currently working on right now. So pretty much once I get right to the end, that's pretty much it. I would place this on a to be continue. Originally, I had planned to do a whole series of comics with Java and his friend Zoe. It was called Adventureroos. At first, I had planned for this to be like a movie, but I don't really have the funds or anything like that to have it made, and I don't have a script for this. So it was either doing it as a movie or a comic, but again, if I do it in comic form, I still have problems writing the script with these characters. And if say the first movie or comic goes well, then this particular story, The Orb of Fear, I would end up redoing it and make it a part of the story library. But as it stands right now, it's just going to be a one-off Ko-fi comic, as well as others. Now, the Orb of Fear comic is not the only comic I have available on the Ko-fi. I have 2 others, but comparing those to this story is more safe for work type of story, whereas the other two are more so not safe for work. One was involving two characters and their first time together, and the other one was more of a comedic type of story. And those are basically the same payment threshold as Orb of Fear. Whenever the goal is met, a page would be made of either of those comics, and they would get posted on my social medias along with the shout out. So right now I'm just going back, turning on the sketch layer and setting up to do the coloring on the background. Since I'm doing this differently from those other two, whereas those were fully colored, this one in particular was going to be just black and white. But then I took a step further and decided to add screen tones on this, which you'll see later. Right now I'm just setting up everything else before I start filtering in the screen tones. So like this, I'm setting up the shading. Just using all gray tones. Originally I did had this plan to do it full color, but then I thought, why not just go a different route and just do this in grayscale like those manga comics and some of the old school Western comics that some of them would usually just do black and white, like the Bone comics and other ones like the newspaper comics that would go for this black and white and sometimes screen tone coloring. So I thought I'd try it out on this and see how it goes. And so far the results are actually pretty good, and it worked in its favor. I was able to get the pages done quicker because coloring takes the longest for me to do, whereas doing line arts, the sketching, and shading, it usually takes me quicker to do those as opposed to coloring, where it takes the longest amount of time for me to do. I say like 30 minutes to an hour, depending on what I want to do with the color and lighting. But going the black and white manga route on this was a good decision for me to do. And it really helps out with this overall look of this particular comic, especially the short story I was telling with it. It just somehow works with this as opposed to the colored version. I think I did two pages of the colored version, and that's also up on my social media, but the rest is just black and white screen tones. So right now I'm just adjusting, making sure of any spots where I can add a bit more work with the shading and lighting. I may as well talk a little bit about this character. His name is Java J. Taylor. And if you can't tell, he's a kangaroo. He's both a celebrity athlete and the son of a famous archaeologist. He's kind of the enthusiastic, adventurer, daredevil type of guy. Ever since his mom took him to an expedition site when he was a younger Joey, he's been fascinated with all these new discoveries and adventures. So he and his friend Zoe, who's a photojournalist slash model, go all over the globe finding new discoveries and adventures. Some that most of them would usually just happen by coincidence, and they just end up being in the right place at the wrong time, or the wrong place at the right time, or something that one of them would inadvertently cause that would cause the adventure to happen. And Java, being the enthusiastic daredevil, sometimes it would land him in a lot of trouble, but he's smart enough to figure out how to get himself out of it. If not, his friend Zoe would help. Sometimes the roles can be switched with these two. Sometimes Java would be the one who would be in trouble, and sometimes Zoe would be the one in trouble. Because both he and her are the main characters of the whole story. So I don't want Zoe to end up being a sidekick, whereas Java is the main character. I would rather have both of them as the main character and sharing the same type of advantages, disadvantages, flaws, making their personalities a bit opposite of each other. That way they can pretty much help each other out when they're in a scrap. So right now I'm adding in some grayscales, colors on Java, which will be a big help for when I set in the screen tones. Now, I'm aware that Clip Studio Paint has a photo of screen tone materials that I can just click and drag onto the image. But I've been using the layers property to use the screen tones more often than drag and drop, because I just like experimenting with whatever I find on this program. And the layers property was a lot of fun for me to tinker around with, especially with the screen tones. And I find that when I use the screen tones on a colored image, the image would look extremely dark. Whereas when I use gray tones and lighter gray tones, you can see the screen tones perfectly, like right here. And of course I adjust it so it looks good. Then I back up to see how it will look when you look at it from afar. And of course I turn on the shade layer. I find that not putting the screen tone on the shade layer works in its favor. Because the last time I did that, it didn't work so well. Or I probably haven't been tweaking with it enough to get it to blend well. And right here I'm just erasing some parts of the screen tone just to give it a rim light look, because the orb is flashing brightly. But overall, I really like how this is turning out. Now, if you like to read this page, it's already up online, as well as page 7. So currently no pages have been funded yet to continue. But once it does, I would post up a new page once I get it made. And that's pretty much all I have to say about this. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit subscribe and the bell for new updates or videos. And I'll let you watch the rest of this. And thank you for watching.